linked up with
Where were we?
to highways leading to the important
Kinda
cities
here.
of Karbala
Thank you.
and
Oi,
Baghdad.
Shiksi. Thank you,
Due
guys.
to its strategic location, coalition forces decided not to bypass Najaf and instead chose to isolate the town out of fears it could become a staging area for attacks against American supply lines. To accomplish this, the coalition...
I'm confused. They are not taking the city out of fear it could attack supply lines. Did I understand that right? But
needed to capture the bridges to the north and south of the town.
Thank you, Puppe.
Elements of the 1st Brigade combat team attacked the northern bridge, codenamed
These graphics are so well done, man.
Of March 25th,
he must be paying some serious graphic designers for this, man.
With reinforcements before dawn.
They are taking the city off.
The Americans eventually fought their way across the bridge, despite desperate attempts by Iraqi engineers to destroy it. Around the same time, U.S. forces advanced on the southern bridge, codenamed Objective Floyd. Resistance by both regular military and militia forces was intense at both sites. On one occasion, an Iraqi drove a city bus at full speed into an M3 Bradley CFV. On March 20...
What kind of war is that, man? The one side has a fucking tank, and the other guy's driving a bus in the tank, dude.
26,
Jesus.
Najaf was successfully encircled, and the attackers were relieved by the 101st Airborne. Over the next several days, the Americans swept through the town with tanks and infantry. The 101st deliberately left a single road out of the city open in the hope of using it as a kill zone for escaping troops.
Oh, that's clever. You keep one road open in a city you took as a kill zone. Oof.
On April 1st, some weary Iraqi soldiers took the bait and were ambushed by snipers and helicopter gunships, and the city ultimately fell on April 4th.
Won't even try to make them surrender, dude?
To the south, British forces had an unexpectedly difficult time taking Basra and its nearby port. Starting on March 27th, they whittled down the Iraqi garrison defending the valuable port over the course of 2 weeks.
On March 27th, British forces destroyed 14 Iraqi tanks in the largest British tank battle since World War II. I heard about that. Where did Iraqi tanks come from? Like, they didn't fucking design and engineer themselves, right? Where did Iraqi tanks from? Anyone know? You guys always know everything. Russia.
They finally
Russia.
gained control of
Soviet
the vital
Union.
waterway. Only 11 Britons had died, while the Iraqis had lost some 40 to 50 times that number.
Jesus. How's that a war, man? This is a massacre.
Into the city, they were welcomed by jubilant locals, as predicted by U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Unfortunately, however, the crowds quickly turned into mobs of looters. The final major engagement before coalition forces arrived in Baghdad was at the Battle of Karbala Gap, a roughly 25-mile or 40-kilometer-long strip of land flanked by the Euphrates and Razaza rivers. Iraqi commanders were well aware of the gap's strategic importance and had placed 2 divisions of the elite Republican Guard to block the Americans' advance. However, Saddam Hussein's son, Qusay, severely weakened the defense by redirecting some of them to the north, which proved to be a fatal mistake.
Good job,
On April
mate.
1st,
Good job.
American troops broke through the gap, reaching the Euphrates at the city of Musayyib. Though several Iraqi armored divisions counterattacked on the night of April 3rd, they were driven back by aircraft and...
Bro, I mean, these Iraqis are getting annihilated. What the fuck are you gonna do? There's some fucking transformer flying through the air, dropping shit on you.
Rocket fire.
What the hell are you gonna do, man?
To the important
it's just mad to me that they're not giving up and just surrendering.
Forced open and
if this would happen in Hoi4, I'd just like capitulate. Okay, man, I got you.
Began. While the Iraqi army had almost completely disintegrated at this point, the Ba'athist Party militias holding the city did not hesitate to utilize underhanded tactics to slow the coalition advance. After extended skirmishes with the defenders, Colonel David Perkins launched a surprise thunder run of nearly 30 tanks straight into the city on April 5th. Once behind enemy lines, the column came under intense fire from militiamen disguised as civilians, but Perkins was able to identify their defensive positions and execute a fighting withdrawal. U.S. Marines then stormed the Diyala Bridge on the eastern side of the city and advanced along the...
How many people... Isn't there a Wikipedia that tells you... Like, if you go to Wikipedia and you do Iraq war, you see all the casualties, right? How many... I actually have no idea. Like, right here, I have no idea. Let me predict. I'm predicting 560 Americans dead 20,000 Iraqis. So, wait, the left side is USA, right side is Iraq. Dude! So, wait, the US lost? No, that's strength. The US lost coalition forces. 5,000 US. Oh, that's a lot, actually. 179 UK, 139 others. Missing and captured, blah, blah, blah. Wounded. Jesus, injured or disease. Contractors. What is that, like mercenaries? Fucking hell, that's bad company. And Iraq lost up to 10,000. 26,000. Jesus. Your total dead. Actually kind of low for a war, right? If you think about it. Total dead, 35,000 Iraq, 25,000 coalition forces. But shit ton of people wounded, man. God damn. If you think about it, a small war in a way, right? And, man, Corona kills that fucking in a week, dude. God damn.
Northern bank of the Euphrates. Aware that this flank was almost entirely undefended, the nervous troops fired on any car refusing to halt out of fear of
yeah, well, I wanted to look at the whole war. I wanted to look at the whole
carnage, war. Perkins led another thunder run into the heart of the capital on the 7th, and rewarded himself by spending the night in one of Saddam's opulent palaces. After a final desperate defense by the militias, the city was finally captured on April 9th. There were some initial celebrations.
1 million civilian... Fuck off. 1 million civilian deaths? You gotta be kidding me. Below 100k soldiers died, as we just shown on Wikipedia. Show me link. Come on. How many civilians died in Iraq? Estimating war-related death poses many challenges. Experts distinguish between population-based studies, which extrapolate from random samples of population, and body counts, which tally reported deaths and likely significantly underestimate casualties. Population-based studies produce estimates of the number of Iraq war casualties ranging from 150,000 violent deaths as of June 2006 to 1 million excess deaths per 2007 opinion research. Other survey-based studies covering different time spans find almost 500,000 total deaths, 60% of them violent. In June 2011, the Iraq Body Count Project documents up to 200,000 violent civilian deaths through February 2020 at their table. All estimates of Iraq war casualties are disputed. So even if we take the lowest counts, which is 185k, or this is civilians, yes? Nah, this is actually everything. Seems to have, dude. The Iraq Family Health Service says 151,000, and then this guy is like, no, it's fucking 4 times that? Jesus. Well, in the end, whatever number is right, you see that the number of civilian deaths seems to be higher than military deaths. Thank you, doctor, which is, wow, sad, dude.
Including widespread vandalism of statues and portraits depicting the now-defeated Saddam. However, as in Basra, massive waves of looting soon followed and continued
small war
until
compared
US
to Vietnam,
forces
Korea, and World War II, that's
cracked down
small.
on offenders. But Saddam himself proved elusive and would not be
They bombed all
captured
the
for
cities.
many months. Coalition soldiers...
Isn't there any fucking rules that when you go to war and bomb a country, you can't hit civilians?
would spend their time securing the occupation and searching for other high-value government officials that had escaped the invasion.
These graphics are
But
so
as
good.
the coalition searched for these officials,
Nobody cares though,
violence between Iraq's minority groups soon erupted.
Like, I've seen these videos on YouTube, man. I'm not gonna show them. Where these Americans are shooting people and they're literally saying, I think these are civilians. Oh, who cares? Fuck them up. They fucking shoot everything. Are these guys in prison? I don't know. The only justified Iraq war was when they invaded Kuwait. Thank you for the sub.
And insurgents began
WikiLeaks showed
to
these
assemble.
videos, yeah. Where they literally say, I think this guy is just a dad and a son. Oh.
Nonetheless, on May 1st, 2003, off the coast of San Diego, President Bush made a dramatic
Another loser bracket game? If there's a loser bracket game right now, I would watch it.
USS
And then call the
Abraham
stream.
Lincoln, the former Air National Guard aviator, wore a flight suit for his televised address in front of a national audience. Standing in front of an enormous banner reading, "Mission Accomplished," He announced the end of major combat operations in Iraq. At the time, the proclamation seemed reasonable. The Iraqi military...
Dude, all you young kids need to understand something. When I was young, we thought George Bush is hardcore. Dude, when I was fucking 15, 16, we were like, George Bush, fuck, that guy's crazy. And dude, and then years later, you have Trump coming in, and George Bush just seems like the smallest fucking kid, man. It's like there's always a new level achieved. Always a new level, man.
...was in shambles, and Saddam Hussein had been reduced from an autocrat to a fugitive. But despite all appearances, the troubles were just beginning. For the next 8 years, the coalition was engaged in a protracted counterinsurgency and suffered heavy casualties, while many thousands of civilians lost their lives. In 2003, the mission...
The biggest losers of war are always the fucking civilians,
and the
man.
brief conventional phase of fighting was indeed finished, but much like in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq had only just begun. Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the armchair historian. And in today's episode,
he puts the whole group together.
Is
there a loser bracket game?
Subject of the
Jeff, what are you talking
2003
about?
Iraq War. This time, however, we will be covering the events from the Iraqi perspective by exploring how the Iraqi people reacted to
Trump
the
didn't get
invasion
America to a stupid
and
war.
the
Still, Trump
subsequent
killed more Americans than
occupation
anywhere
by
but
Western
cold.
powers. We'll also look at the rise of extremism and sectarianism that
There might be a
occurred
winner
after
bracket game.
President Saddam Hussein's
There might be a
regime
winner bracket
was
game?
toppled, and how all this set the
There might be a
stage
winner
for the
bracket game?
many
I'm
years
fucking
of
hyped. Wolfie, you
insurrections,
tell me I'm
civil
there,
war,
man.
and international
I'd love to see that.
intervention. It cannot be overemphasized how much of a shock the 2003 invasion was to the Iraqi people. Even when President George Bush gave Iraq his famous 48-hour ultimatum, Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein remained convinced that U.S.
We might have a winner
forces
bracket
lacked
game. I would
the
love that.
capacity
But then I'm
to
too
wage
exhausted.
more
Then
than
I'm
a
done, man.
limited military campaign against his country. Saddam and his generals were well aware of past American failures, such as the infamous Black Hawk Down incident during the Somali Civil War. Saddam had
Black Hawk Down
also
happened in
studied the
Somalia. I
conflict
always thought I thought Black Hawk Down was... No, Black Hawk Down was Somalia. Yeah. I remember. That was a good movie, man. That was a sick movie, dude. So what am I doing?
in Vietnam, and hoped to replicate the success of the North Vietnamese by bogging down any invasion with defensive attritional warfare. With graphic scenes of destruction plastered across American TV screens, Saddam expected popular opinion to quickly turn against the country.
I understand that. I understand that Saddam would think like this. You know, like this is a new Vietnam. But, dude, it's not fucking 1960 anymore.
Until coalition forces withdrew in disgrace. Yet, as we will see, many factors conspired to doom the Iraqi war effort long before the first shots were fired. Chief amongst these factors were Saddam's legendary paranoia, which made men like Joseph Stalin seem completely sane by comparison. His direct preparations
I told you
for
guys,
the
it's
war
always a
were
new level.
greatly surpassed by his efforts to completely lock down the Iraqi populace, pouring huge resources into the state security apparatus and surveillance programs. Many of the intelligence organizations that Saddam created were in fact tasked primarily with spying on each other. Being late to the blame game was fatal, and so these various
Those accused of
agencies
treason
spent
would be
months
tortured extensively in order to extract confessions and implicate other conspirators that could...
early chasing phantoms and inventing elaborate conspiracy theories. Naturally, the sentence for being accused in this web of lies and intrigue was always the same: death. Predictably, this insanity had a profound effect on the military readiness of the country. Saddam valued loyalty above all other traits and divided his forces into three groups based on their perceived trustworthiness. These were the regular army, the Republican Guard, and finally, the Special Republican Guard, or SR.
But how would you determine that? How would you determine, I don't know, this is like a test? Like, do you think Saddam mustache is sexy? Yes, very sexy. Oh, you're SRG. How would you determine? How would you look into someone's brain knowing how loyal they
army
are?
Groups were forbidden, and joint operations were unthinkable. One SRG
Training and
commander
brainwashing.
recalled after the war, "We never coordinated."
I'm looking for information
with the
for that winner
Republican
bracket
Guard.
game.
I had no relation with any other units or fighting forces. No other units were ever allowed near our unit. No visits
Only
between
SRG was
other officers
permitted
ever
in the
allowed.
capital.
In Saddam's mind, the only possible reason two officers of differing units would ever want to talk to each other would be to discuss a coup. Yet despite their highly dysfunctional leadership, the average Iraqi soldier strode into battle with a surprising degree of misplaced confidence. For years, the army was blasted with
These are the biggest results of this whole thing, man.
Infidel Americans would soon fall before the sword of Islam. The prevailing attitude among the military was that the US was a paper tiger, able to emit a terrifying roar, but incapable of enduring any serious losses. Since his successful coup in the late 1960s, Saddam Hussein had ruled Iraq at the head of the Arab Socialist Ba'athist Party, which functioned as the central government and controlled all aspects of state policy. Given his unusually long reign, an entire generation of Iraqis had grown up having experienced nothing but Saddam's dictatorship. So few could imagine a world without their tyrannical leader exercising absolute power over their daily lives. However,
yeah, it's crazy, right? When you have an autocratic regime like a dictatorship and it actually survives 50, 60 years, so you literally have full generations that know nothing else. I think North Korea is a great example for that. These people know nothing else, so they can't miss anything else. That's the interesting thing. Sorry, man.
It is surprising how outright hostile the average Iraqi citizen was towards their supposed American liberators. For 12 years, America was only ever known as the distant oppressor, raining terror from the skies via airstrikes and subverting Iraqi culture by funding insurrectionist
movements. Doesn't the Middle
East
think
Meanwhile,
about
the
that
few natives
like that
who
still?
benefited from Western education experienced decades of villainization and dehumanization at the hands of
Biden
the
just bombed
Ba'athist
Syria
Party,
2 days ago,
who
right?
painted them
Thank
as
you, Bruce
traitors
Plumps.
who sold out their own country for American petrodollars. Many Iraqis were
Yes, we
further
still do.
distrustful of America
Mustafa.
after its behavior during the Iran-Iraq War, when
And
it
who in
had
the end brings
cheered
world peace?
Saddam
Tommy
on
K
as
on
an
Twitch.
indispensable
Iraqis
ally
and
in the Middle
Americans
East,
together
only
in
to
chat
turn
together.
on his regime
And
as
before they
soon as
all
he
whisper each other,
threatened
I'm gonna
American
bomb you, give
interests
me your
in
oil,
Kuwait.
bitch. Allah Akbar.
Saddam's regime also possessed a natural air of legitimacy thanks to his close ties to Islam. This was
Your parents only knew Honecker. The difference between my parents and East Germany was that they had their immediate neighbors in Germany and they saw their life. They had the radio, they got the packages, they saw how they lived, and that's why they wanted it. If you really want to fucking put a society in complete lockdown, you can't let any outside influence in, man. If you show people how capitalism gives you cool shit like milk and cheese and jeans, they want to have that
due
shit,
to
man.
his extensive program of mosque building throughout Iraq and decades spent manipulating his citizens into a state of unquestioning religious devotion. Even those Muslims that hated their dictator still viewed his regime as inherently preferable to a democratic state, especially one subject to degenerate Western influences. This was a concept that the US was simply unaccustomed to dealing with and led to many problems further down the line. A second, and arguably far more important...
Unaccustomed with? Wasn't Vietnam like that? I don't know. Wasn't the average Vietnamese person also like, what the fuck are these fucking white Americans doing here? Unaccustomed with? Really?
factor that the US failed to consider was the ideological
the point of
divide
religion,
between the two major branches of Islam, the Sunni
Not religiously,
and the Shia. The reigning Ba'athist party consisted primarily of Sunni Muslims, while the neighboring Iran had undergone a revolution in 1979 that resulted in the creation of a Shia-controlled Islamic Republic. Fearful of a...
Dude, I say this as a white guy, I never understood this fucking Shia Sunni bullshit. I know it's about some uncle from Muhammad and shit, but man, you're fucking all Muslims. Why are you fucking each other, man? Jesus Christ. Just come together and bring the sword of Allah to the infidels. No, you Sunni, you... fucking dumb shit, man.
A similar revolution in
So
Iraq,
stupid.
Saddam brutally oppressed his Shia subjects.
It's like, I believe in Zaruman, I believe in Sauron. It's the fucking, some made up dumb shit and everybody goes fucking. It's like orcs and Urukai fighting. Oh wait, that happened too.
Excluding them from positions of authority and conducting mass executions whenever there was any hint of rebellion. But such tyrannical measures, while effective in the short term, served only to stoke the fires of sectarian
It's like Catholic
violence that would
Protestants. Yeah, it's
blaze
just
out
dumb
of
shit,
control
man.
almost from the
But Catholics and Protestants make some sense, because the Protestants tried to take power away from the church and all their fucking scams and shit. Is that the same in Sunni and Shia?
moment that US forces stepped across the border. Much of the chaos following the invasion could have been avoided had the invading coalition forces drafted a feasible plan for bringing stability
like Catholics and Orthodox.
of a regime change.
But what a
Sadly,
useless...
this was
Wow,
not the
dumb is
case,
to fight
and
each other.
civil disorder quickly became
Wolf, is there a winner back in the game? What did you say?
Shia militant groups seeking vengeance on their former
Dogs and
Sunni
Urukai
oppressors.
should
Troubles
really
peaked
have
in the
peace. The
capital
difference
city
is the
of
succession
Baghdad,
of the
which
prophet.
fell
But
into a
yeah, what does
state
that
of
matter?
virtual
Do they have
anarchy
different
following
teachings
its
or what?
capture. Shopkeeper Muhammad Abba.
And why does this succession matter? Just listen to Muhammad's word in the Quran and fuck his descendants? Imagine Jesus has a great-great-great-great-granddaughter who says, you gotta use dog filters on Instagram. You listen to her? No, you listen to the boss, man. You listen to Babu Jesus, not his shitty fucking ancestors.
Who had fled
Very
the
different
city as the
teachings.
Americans approached, said, when I got back to Baghdad, it was not the city I had left just a week before. You saw people walking everywhere carrying looted goods. Nowhere could you see any sign of law and order. No police, no military, no government, nothing. Everything had collapsed. The feelings of betrayal amongst the civilian population perhaps reached their peak after the Al-Tabul raid in early 2004, when US forces entered and ransacked a mosque whose imam had recently begun preaching anti-American rhetoric and providing
Muslims don't
bomb-making
like that
lessons
stuff, man.
to would-be insurgents.
They don't like that stuff.
Although a large cache of weapons and explosives were uncovered during the raid, Muslims across Iraq were horrified by the images of the desecrated holy place.
I think I
with
even remember
furniture
these
smashed
pictures.
and copies of the sacred
Oh, that wasn't
Quran
very clever
scattered
politically,
across the
man.
floor. To add insult to injury, the Americans offered no apology, instead merely publishing a list of the seized items and brushing off the affair as just another routine operation against Saddam's forces. Extremist clerics were quick to jump at this golden opportunity, decrying the occupiers as devils, whose sole purpose was to wage a war against the faithful of Islam.
This is gonna sound weird. This all reminds me of Attack on Titan, the final season.
To
Like all
aid
these
this
factions, and
terrorist
they all hate
militia
each other
groups
and think they're the
attacked
devils, but they're all the
coalition
same in the
bases
end.
dressed as civilians, forcing American soldiers to treat everyone as a potential threat. This created a vicious cycle of mutual distrust, each act of bad faith on one side triggering retaliation by the other, which only led to further escalation. Given how volatile the situation was, coalition forces quickly announced a provisional government to provide a peaceful transition to democracy. But when the members of the new Iraqi governing council were revealed, the public was shocked to discover that it consisted of 13 Shias and only 10 Sunnis, 5 of whom were Kurdish minorities. To the Americans, this was simply a matter of proportional representation. After all, the Shias were the majority. However, to the Sunni loyalists of Iraq, the sight of the coalition raising up a government led by Shiites and Kurds was proof that Saddam's anti-Western rhetoric had been right all along. The situation was not
What a fucked up situation, man. Jesus.
by the behavior of some opportunistic Shia who quickly stepped in to fill the void left by their Sunni counterparts. To quote Sunni government employee Abu Mustafa, all of these senior officials had simply vanished, and soon we began to see a new sectarian order. People claiming to be doing the bidding of the Shiite religious authorities began to fill the posts left open by the vanished Baathists. They began verbally abusing and firing Sunnis or anyone they distrusted. Fortunately for America, there was still
That's where they threw a shoe at George Bush, right? And he was ducking
one
under.
organization that had a solid plan for dealing with the rising tensions in Iraq, the CIA. In the aftermath of the invasion, the CIA was in charge of tracking down and capturing as many members of the former Iraqi intelligence agencies as possible. Their efforts eventually succeeded when they rounded up a huge cabal of Ba'ath Party loyalists, many of whom openly admitted to torture, murder, and various criminal activities. Having listened carefully to the various testimonies made against these men, the CIA quickly concluded that there was only one reasonable course of action: to immediately offer them their jobs back and rebuild the core of Saddam's police state from the ground up. The CIA rationalized this decision with the logic that under Saddam, terrorist activity in the region had been kept to a minimum, and therefore there was nothing intrinsically wrong with his methods, only his goals. With all the worst aspects of the old regime now being restored by the very people claiming to be their liberators, the Iraqi people were finally pushed over the edge. An explosion of violence rocked the nation, and the capital city was divided up into warring Sunni and Shia suburbs. The occupiers could do little but watch as chaos engulfed the nation. Their
What
efforts
a
to help
majorly
constantly
fucked up
roadblocked by
situation,
radicalism
man.
of their own inability to understand Iraqi culture. This bitterness and mistrust created an atmosphere where coalition soldiers saw danger around every corner. The political vacuum left by Saddam's defeat also allowed many extremist organizations to gain a significant foothold in the Middle East, turning the country into a war zone between government forces and radical militias. By 2006, the violence had
Battle Royale.
escalated into a full-scale
Battle
civil
Royale.
war that saw the attempts of ethnic cleansing by
I mean, in a way, you could argue that the mistakes of American politics in the Middle East left to the destabilization of the Middle East and the radicalization of groups there, aka like ISIS growing and terrorism happening, right?
both Sunnis and
Still, I want to give America some slack. How else would you have done it? Like, you know, like don't go there. No, you still have to go there. But this is such a fucking complex topic, such a complex culture and lands. Like, how the fuck you want to handle this shit, man?
Shias, resulting in the displacement of several million people. To this day, Iraq
You would, as a Western nation, you would like to create a democratic nation there that keeps everything in check, right? Which we're trying to do for years now in Afghanistan. It doesn't work. Yeah, what a majorly fucked up situation,
remains one
man.
of the most unstable countries on Earth, with American forces being withdrawn.
Stay in your country? Stay in your country would mean, would you rather have a dictator like Saddam, but no terrorism and stability? But he's like doing some bad shit? Thank you, random number sequence. Or do you take down someone like Saddam and let the terrorists take over?
2011,
I don't think there's an easy answer to that a Twitch chat can easily find.
Combat the growing power of ISIS.
Do we have a winner bracket
in the
game or
region.
not? What's going on?
Faced with endless threats,
I was
both
promised.
external and internal, the fragile democratic state, now ruling the nation, is constantly hamstrung by the meddling of foreign intelligence agencies and the deep, bitter divisions amongst its populace. But with ISIS finally losing its territory in the country in 2017, some still cling
Just
to
rebuild
the
the ultimate
faint
empire.
hope that Iraq may
But then if you
finally
have
be
like
regaining
if you
its
have a
footing.
stable, strong nation in the Middle East, then the West, America doesn't want that because, oh, dankeschön, danke. Ich komme jetzt, glaube ich, auch gleich raus. And then you don't want that, and you know, just a majorly fucked up situation. And in the end, who's the big loser? The civilians, man. Normal fucking dudes, man, that
As a
just want to
modern nation.
hang out and have a life,
Even
and they
so,
just get
there
bombed
is
every
still
fucking
much
10
work
years.
left to be done.
Great video, man. Great fucking video. This guy is fucking epic, man. It's a privilege to watch these videos. Yeah.